The plastic tray trembled slightly in my hands, not because it was heavy, but because the words had hit harder than a slap. "You can't afford to eat with us," the CEO's assistant hissed, her voice laced with disdain. She didn't even look up from her overpriced salad. "Go back to wherever you came from." Every fork paused midair. The cafeteria fell into the kind of silence that made your skin itch. Some looked away. Others stared right through me. But no one, not a single person, said a word. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. My heart thudded, but I didn't blink. I kept my expression blank, as if I hadn't just been publicly humiliated by someone who wore confidence like armor and heels like weapons. Her name tag read Rebecca Owens, executive assistant to the CEO in bold serif font, like it meant royalty. I glanced down at my tray. A simple turkey sandwich, black coffee, and a banana. $6.49 total. I could buy this building with the change in my husband's gym bag. But they didn't know that. And I wasn't here to make friends. So I exhaled softly, turned on my heel, and walked to the far end of the cafeteria, past the polished tables filled with junior analysts, engineers, and consultants pretending not to notice, and sat alone at the high-top counter by the vending machines. The stool creaked as I sat. I didn't touch my food. Not yet. Not until I'd finished watching. From this angle, I could see everything. How Rebecca laughed with the CFO's assistant, how two marketing interns whispered and glanced toward me like I was a stain on the napkin of their social ecosystem. But none of them knew. None of them knew that Celia, the woman in a budget coat, worn flats, and a quiet face, was legally married to the man who was about to finalize the $1.2 billion acquisition of this company. None of them knew that I wasn't here to observe the office layout, the product demo, or the financials. I was here to evaluate something far more important. People. Their ethics. Their behavior. Their capacity for kindness when they thought no one was watching. So far, they were failing. I took out the pen from my coat pocket and scribbled 3 words into the small black notebook I'd tucked in my tote. Rebecca. Cafeteria. Cruel. The door to the cafeteria opened again. A man in a navy jacket entered, glanced around, and moved toward my corner. He was older, maybe late 50s, wiry frame, thinning gray hair. His eyes caught mine, then darted toward the empty seat next to me. "Mind if I?" he asked, gesturing. I shook my head. "Be my guest." He sat with a soft grunt and opened a Tupperware container that smelled faintly of tomato soup. He offered a shy smile. "I'm Paul." "Maintenance," he said. "Celia," I replied, returning the smile. "You're new." "Just here for a few days," I said carefully. "Consulting." He nodded. "Well, if you're consulting on cafeteria seating, you picked the wrong spot. That's the unofficial invisible people zone." I smiled. Maybe that's exactly why I chose it. Paul chuckled and dipped his sandwich into his soup. "You're all right." I made another note in my journal under a different section. Paul, maintenance. Warm. Decent soul. Just then, laughter erupted again from the VIP table. Rebecca had leaned in close to her friend, loud enough for all to hear. Next, she'll be asking to share a desk with the interns. Honestly, where do they even find these people? Paul gave a long sigh. She's been like that since she got here last year. Makes everyone feel 2 inches tall. I turned slightly, watching her parade her arrogance like it was part of the company culture. Her laughter, sharp, rehearsed, hollow, cut through the air like glass breaking inside a church. No. No church. Just glass breaking. Inside people. Sometimes, Paul said quietly, I think the worst thing about this place isn't the stress or the deadlines. It's watching good people stay quiet when someone's being humiliated. I looked at him. He wasn't wrong. But they'd learn. By end of the day, they'd learn exactly who I was. And why I was there. By 3:15 p.m., the air in the office felt thinner. It wasn't the temperature. It was the tension, the quiet, simmering energy that bloomed in corporate spaces just after lunch, when caffeine wore off and gossip settled in. People were twitchy. Everyone was watching everyone else a little more closely. Especially me. I noticed the shift the moment I returned to the shared workspace on the 8th floor, the one labeled Development Strategy Satellite Pod, in sterile Helvetica on a laminated sheet. This morning, they barely noticed when I walked in.
But now?
Now they were whispering. A young woman in glasses nudged her friend, subtly nodding toward me. A guy in a Patagonia vest tilted his head, squinting like I was some kind of foreign object placed on the wrong shelf. I sat at the unused desk in the back corner, booted up the spare laptop they'd issued, and pretended to scroll. It was all part of the act. "Hey," someone said behind me. I turned. Rebecca. She stood there with a small plastic folder pressed against her chest like it was a clutch purse. Her nails were perfect. Red, glossy, shaped like almonds. Her smile, however, was serrated. "Just a friendly heads up," she said sweetly, leaning down slightly so no one else would hear. "The culture here's fast-paced. No offense, but you might want to keep your head down if you want to last the week." She winked. Like we were friends. Like her warning was helpful. I tilted my head and gave her a smile. "Thank you. I appreciate your concern." "Oh, no problem. Us girls gotta stick together, right?" she said with syrupy sarcasm, then walked off, her heels clacking like accusations across marble tile. My hands were tight fists under the desk. Stick together? She'd rather see me fired and fumbling outside with my tote bag in the rain than offer any real support. I took another note in my book. Smiles while cutting you down. Passive cruelty, institutionalized. My phone vibrated in my coat pocket. One text. "Lucas. How's it going in the lion's den, love?" I smiled for real then, the kind that softened my features. Lucas Caldwell. My husband. CEO of Caldwell Holdings. The man who quietly bought 47% of this company's shares last quarter and was preparing to sign the full acquisition by Friday. No one here knew. Not even the board. NDA locked. And I wasn't just here for fun. I was the final test. Lucas always said, a company's real culture isn't what's in the handbook. It's what they do when they think no one's watching.
And today?
They were failing. Another ping. "Lucas, I'll be there by 6. Ready to meet the wolves?" I typed back. "They're already baring their teeth." Just as I slipped the phone away, the guy in the vest walked by and dropped a stack of printouts in front of me. "Need you to organize those by vertical market penetration for the pitch tomorrow." I blinked. "I'm not part of your team," I said gently.
He scoffed.
"Yeah, no kidding.
Just do it anyway."
Rebecca said your temp support. I looked at the pile. Then at him. He didn't even make eye contact.
Didn't ask.
Just assumed. Another scribble in my notebook. Entitled, Gendered Assumption. Dismissive. Across the room, Paul, the maintenance worker from lunch, caught my eye. He was swapping out a fluorescent tube in the ceiling, balancing awkwardly on a rickety ladder. Our eyes met. He raised his brows, as if asking, "You good?" I gave a small nod.
"Barely."
The guy with the vest turned to leave but mumbled under his breath as he walked off, "This is why they don't pay interns." I froze. That was it. That was the narrative they'd built for me, that I was an intern or temp, maybe even a mistake from HR. A face without a title. Just enough of a nobody to step on. They didn't even ask my last name. Didn't connect it with Lucas Caldwell. Didn't realize the same woman they mocked would soon have access to every one of their HR files. At 5:48 p.m., the emails started flying. The front desk buzzed with word of a VIP visitor. Executives scurried like ants sensing rain. And I sat perfectly still. Because now the test was beginning. By 6:04, I heard his voice. "Good evening, folks." Lucas had that voice, calm, measured, and impossibly commanding. The entire floor froze. I stepped out of my chair and walked into the hallway just as he entered the glass conference room. Rebecca's mouth fell open. She stumbled to her feet, fumbling her clipboard. The guy in the vest straightened so fast his chair rolled back into the printer. Lucas looked right past them and locked eyes with me. Darling, he said, opening his arms. I walked to him.
Calm. Steady.
And when I stepped into his arms, you could feel the silence. Pin drop. Rebecca's lips parted like she was trying to form a sentence.
Lucas kissed my cheek.
Then turned to the room and smiled. Everyone, meet my wife.
Gasps.
Actual, audible gasps. And then, total silence. The words hung in the air like a live wire. Meet my wife. You could almost hear the collective inhale. Then the slow, unraveling panic behind a dozen carefully composed faces. Rebecca's hand dropped from her clipboard. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The guy in the Patagonia vest? He took half a step back like he'd just realized he insulted a judge. Lucas reached for my hand and smiled like this was just another dinner party. Celia's been shadowing the office all day. It's part of our final evaluation before the acquisition. Evaluation. Rebecca's voice cracked slightly. Wait, but we didn't know. You weren't supposed to, Lucas replied smoothly. We wanted to see how staff treat people when there's no title attached. When someone walks in without the usual power, position, or privilege. I could feel the energy shift again. A kind of silent panic, like air escaping from a sinking ship. The CFO's assistant stood abruptly. Sir, if we'd known. But you didn't, I said quietly, my voice even. That's the whole point. Paul had appeared at the hallway corner. He leaned on his mop, watching, eyes wide. When I met his gaze, he gave me the smallest, proudest nod. I returned it with a soft smile. Lucas gestured toward the seats. We'll be reviewing our findings tonight, but I wanted to meet the team personally before signing off. Rebecca's eyes were glassy. Her smile looked broken. Mr. Caldwell, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Lucas turned to her. Your name's Rebecca Owens, right? She stiffened. Yes, sir. You'll receive your severance details by end of the week. It was delivered so calmly, so cleanly. No shouting, no spectacle, just a verdict. Rebecca swayed where she stood. Wait, what? Lucas didn't flinch. We don't tolerate cruelty at Caldwell Holdings. Not in private, not in public, and certainly not toward people you think are beneath you. He looked around the room. Anyone else who participated in that culture will be under review. No one moved. No one even breathed. And that's when it hit them. This wasn't just a company acquisition. This was a cleansing. I stepped forward. And, to be clear, it's not just about what you did to me. It's what you didn't do when others were being mistreated. The silence. The looks. The whispered laughs. I turned to Paul, still standing quietly in the hall. But not everyone failed. Lucas followed my gaze, then raised his voice just enough for the room to hear. Paul, would you join us for a moment? Paul stepped forward slowly, still holding his mop. Lucas extended his hand. Thank you for showing the kind of humanity this company desperately needs more of. Starting Monday, we'd like to promote you to facilities coordinator. Full benefits. Bonus included. Paul blinked. Sir, I just fix lights. Lucas smiled. And today, you lit up the only decent part of this entire floor. A few gasps. A few lowered heads. The weight of truth was finally settling in. Some were scared. Some were ashamed. But most? They were speechless. And that was exactly the point. The meeting dissolved like sugar in boiling water. No one spoke. Some tried to slink away, but Lucas stopped them with a single look. If you're in a rush, he said calmly, you might not want to be here tomorrow. Silence.
He turned to me.
Would you like to finish what we started, love? I nodded and stepped forward, notebook in hand. My voice was calm, but I didn't hold back. This company has brilliant products. But the soul of it? It's been rotting. Not because of the work, but because of the people allowed to thrive while tearing others down. I looked around. No one met my eyes. You didn't know who I was. And that's okay. You weren't supposed to. But what matters is how quickly some of you decided I didn't matter. I opened my notebook and began to read calmly. Monday, 9:12 a.m., ignored by front desk, brushed off with HR's not ready for you, come back later. 10:04 a.m., directed to wait in a storage room. 11:40 a.m., Rebecca Owens makes public comment about budget interns taking up space. 12:13 p.m., refused a seat in cafeteria. I paused, then turned the page. But also, 12:16 p.m., Paul, maintenance, offered me kindness without knowing who I was. 2:49 p.m., admin assistant Maria helped me find a quiet desk without asking for thanks. 4:02 p.m., IT support walked me through the system setup even when it wasn't their job. I closed the book. We'll be restructuring, Lucas added. Not just the leadership, the culture. There were murmurs, nervous shifting. Someone raised a hand, a young guy from HR, maybe mid-30s. So, is everyone being let go? Lucas smiled.
No.
Just those who've made it clear they don't value people. Titles can be trained. Character can't. Rebecca still stood there, white as printer paper. I turned to her, locking eyes one final time. You asked me earlier to go back to where I came from, so let me return the favor. Her mouth parted slightly. Go back to wherever you learned to mistake cruelty for confidence. And with that, I walked out of the room. The silence behind me was deafening, but I didn't look back. Later that night, Lucas and I sat in the back of our black SUV, the city lights of Manhattan painting gold streaks across the windows. My heels were off. My heart was still racing. Lucas slid his hand over mine. You were incredible. They'll never forget today. Good. I leaned my head against his shoulder. You know what hurts the most? He waited. I wasn't shocked they were rude. I was shocked how easy it was for them to decide I was nothing. Lucas kissed my hair. Let them remember what it felt like to underestimate the quietest person in the room. I nodded. Tomorrow, I said, let's start writing the new company manual. Page 1. Empathy isn't optional. Monday morning arrived like thunder behind glass. The office buzzed with rumors before the sun had even fully touched the skyline. People arrived earlier than usual, eyes darting, lips tight. No more smug laughter in the hallways. No more careless whispers in break rooms. Something had shifted. No one said it out loud, but they all knew. The woman they'd pushed aside had come back, and everything was different now. I arrived at 8:58 a.m. This time, no one ignored me. The receptionist stood up so fast she knocked over her water bottle. Good morning, Mrs. Caldwell. Would you like me to call upstairs? I smiled softly. That won't be necessary. As I walked through the lobby, every eye followed. Heads bowed slightly. Whispers paused mid-sentence. The elevators opened. Waiting inside were 3 senior managers who had each, in their own way, contributed to the toxic rot that had settled into the company over the years. All 3 stepped out of the elevator, faces pale, and let me in alone. It was silent all the way to the top. The executive floor, previously only accessible to top-level leadership, had been restructured over the weekend. Lucas and I spent 48 hours reviewing reports, emails, feedback surveys, even janitorial complaint logs. The results were damning. At 9:30 a.m., Lucas addressed the full company in the main conference hall and over Zoom for remote staff. The tone wasn't angry, but it was final. We're not interested in punishment, he said. We're interested in change. I stepped beside him. My name is Celia Caldwell, I said, no longer hiding behind a borrowed name or borrowed silence. I was here last week to see this place for what it really is. I paused. And I did. Some people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few looked down, but others, the ones who hadn't failed the test, looked straight at me. Maria.
Paul.
The intern who offered me her seat when the conference room filled up. The quiet engineer who complimented my note-taking. They were still here, because they deserved to be. I'm not interested in revenge, I continued. But I am interested in making sure this place never again tells someone they don't belong. Then I stepped aside. Lucas took the mic again. We're forming a new internal team called the Culture Core. It will report directly to Celia. Yes, she'll be your lead advisor. You'll treat her as you would any executive, because that's exactly who she is. And just like that, the room shifted again. Power doesn't need to shout. Sometimes it just needs to walk back in, quietly, calmly, and remind people what respect looks like. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my new office. Corner window, warm wood furniture, a quiet potted plant I named Justice, when there was a knock on the door. It was Paul. He looked unsure, hat in hand, same overalls, but a new ID badge that read Facilities Director. "Got a minute?" he asked. "For you?" "Always." He stepped in. "I just wanted to say thanks for not forgetting the little guy." "You were never the little guy, Paul. You were just the one no one saw." He chuckled, eyes soft. "Not anymore." When he left, I stood by the window, watching the street below. The city moved like it always did. Fast, loud, ruthless. But here, inside this building, a woman who was once told she didn't belong had become the one who decided who did.